Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our second show of season 2. Nicky Nuts, we got to keep up with your tradition. We'll call it the Mark Hal episode. Sorry, Ed Van Emp. Now, we are Flyer and Ice. We are brought to you by the Heat Ratio Sports Network. We encourage you to subscribe to Heat Ratio on YouTube. Please check out our podcasts on Apple Pod, Spotify, and any of the podcasts. It's a great way to have a ride home from work. Put Flyer and Ice on a podcast. Gentlemen, it's good to see you again. With me, as always, is Vance, Mr. Smooth Crew, Nick the Scout, Tosti, and the mold breaker himself, Nicky Nuts. Gentlemen, we're going to go off script. For those of you that don't watch our show, we're pretty organized, and listen, we have production meetings, we do our stuff, but news happened today that we have to address, and I think we need to address it right away. Out of Chicago, the story broke that Stan Bowman and other executives were fired for essentially a scandal that's been ongoing since 2010. A former video coach, Bradley Aldrich, sexually assaulted a young player back in 2010 on the Blackhawks. Later was fired that summer, but endorsed to go to another job at the University of Miami, later endorsed to go to a high school job in Michigan, where he then assaulted a 16-year-old hockey player. And that's just two, and there's probably more. Those are two that came to light. So, gentlemen, being in the Philadelphia area, we're not too unfamiliar with this type of scandal. We're all Penn State fans in this area, and this kind of brings to light almost Jerry Sandusky, Joe Paterno 2.0, as it were. A horrible story that affected us years ago, and I'm sure the whole Midwest and Chicago is dealing with that now. Obviously, it's an appalling story. I mean, we're talking 11 years this has been buried, hidden. It's disgraceful. And on top of it, I was reading about how the player that was involved in 2010, a young player, perhaps they call him John Doe. They won't address who the player is. I don't know if he was a young kid trying to make the team, but the team bullied him when he brought the allegations to light. The team bullied him on the ice when he brought the allegations to light. It's appalling. I don't know what to say. I really don't know what to say. Vance, you're the smoothest guy I know. Can you kick off this topic? Your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm glad that the NHL is getting involved. And, as I mentioned to you guys earlier, they're also interviewing Joel Quenneville for his part in it and what he may have known. But I think this is just one of those things, guys. It's unacceptable. These things can't be allowed to happen. Anyone who was involved, I expect the NHL to step in and make sweeping changes around the league. It's just there's no place for that anywhere. And, it's unfortunate that we still hear these things far too often. And the fact that, you have players bullying this player as well, it also speaks to the culture of that organization. And, I think that the NHL really needs to make sweeping changes and step in and make examples out of anybody and everybody that was involved in this scandal.
And a loyal listener, Trevor, yeah, absolutely, Trevor, a black guy for the NHL. It's just awful. It's awful. Nick Tosti.
Well, when are people in these types of positions going to learn that this isn't the right thing? I mean, it isn't what you do as an organization. You don't cover things like this up. Can you imagine being the parent of this young player and knowing what they knew, the brass for the Chicago Blackhawks, as parents themselves? How could you sleep at night knowing that you're covering up a situation and then endorsing this video coach to go on to 2 other positions where he goes on to assault 2 younger kids, and this all could have been prevented? The fact that the players bullied this kid or trying to intimidate him into either not going to whoever he went to bring out this story or to try and keep this quiet is an absolute disgrace. And you go back to some of the players that were on that team, and you can only imagine who were some of the ones. I don't want to speculate,
Right.
but Jonathan Toews was the captain of that team, and was he involved? You just go down the list, and
Well, they're all involved because
Yeah.
there's no way they didn't know. Is the
Right.
bottom line. There's no
I mean,
way
as
they
far as the
didn't know.
bullying part of it,
Right, but
who was involved there? Yeah.
as a teacher, the people that don't do anything are called the enablers,
Right.
and that's almost, if not as bad. Nikki Nuts, there's a saying. I was listening to Dave Poulin today on XM on my way home from work, and he said there's a saying in every locker room: what's seen in here, what's said in here, stays in here. Not something like this, though, right, Nikki Nuts?
Absolutely disgusting. I'm sorry, but this is far beyond just hockey. This is just morals in general, and I think my personal views is that the society has failed in this part of our lives, and it needs to be addressed. It needs to be addressed across the line with all professions, not just hockey, not just sports, but all professions. And the fact that people know about it and say nothing makes me absolutely ill to think that.
No, I can't agree with you more. And gentlemen, and I don't want to spend the whole show on this. It's a heavy topic, but I mean, it's been 11 years. Don't you think the NHL caught wind of this? I mean, they're even covering it up to some extent. Wouldn't you say? They have to have known. Vance.
Everybody knew.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that you try to keep quiet for as long as you can, unfortunately. And in this day and age, where we are right now, it's like I said earlier, it's just not acceptable. And any and everybody that was involved should be punished, to the harshest extent.
And now, and again, the Patrick Kane situation's a tad separate, but it goes to the culture of maybe hiding things over there, right? Right, Nick the Scout?
Yeah, I mean, he had, what was it, about 3 or 4 years ago, the sexual allegations came out on him where he sexually assaulted or, sexually harassed a young lady. And it kind of got blown over before it got to the media. And then he got a little bit of a slap on the wrist. I don't know what, I can't remember what the results of the investigation were with that. And if he was found, not guilty of all the allegations. I really don't remember, but I believe he was, because obviously, he kept on playing, and there were no serious repercussions for that. So, but yes, you're right. I mean, why is this stuff coming out now? 10 years ago, 11 years ago, you don't sweep things like this under the rug, no matter who it's for, whether it's a video coach, head coach, general manager, bucket boy, stick guy. It's, when you're talking about what happened to this young player, I mean, God only knows what happened to this young player and what he had to go through, to get the guts to come out and bring this to the attention of really the NHL and the world. And then on top of that, be bullied by the rest of the team, to not bring this out. It's just awful. It is just like, as fans of hockey, as we all are, I mean, you hate to see it come out to your sport, but you just hate to see things like this happen over and over again. And yes, you just, all you can do is have deja vu right now and think about what happened with Sandusky and the Paterno situation at Penn State. But it'll be interesting to see, as more details come out about this, which they will. I believe I saw that on Twitter there's a 100-page report from the law firm that is defending John Doe player number one. So I haven't had a chance to really plow through it yet, but I think there's going to be a lot to come out of this, and we as a society, like Nick said, we need to learn from this. I mean, we need to learn from this. These big boys up at the top that think they can just cover things up, it's awful. It's really really, really, really sad to see.
Yeah, so the NHL fined the Blackhawks $2 million for their handling of the situation. Who's finding them? That's all I want to know. All right, gentlemen, we'll move on. I'm sorry, go ahead, Vance.
Really quick.
Yeah, sure.
I just want to ask this question. I want you guys' opinion on this. Hindsight being 2020. Didn't the Blackhawks beat the Flyers in the Stanley Cup Finals?
Yes.
I want the cup that year.
The cup.
Give us the cup.
No,
I'm joking. I'm kidding.
So here's my point. Then is that the league may have had a vested interest not to say anything about this because it was the best team in the league.
Right.
Had it been the Buffalo Sabres, would this story have come out sooner?
That's a good point.
That's my question.
Yeah, they were a dynasty and for 3 cups. So you're absolutely correct. That could be it. I thought you were going to a direction where like Penn State had all the wins taken away, etc. No. Right. So we thought but you're correct. It probably was hushed because they were the Chicago Blackhawks. And yes, a lesser known team, this might have come out. Brilliant.
Wait till you see the 10,000 tweets that come out with Flyers fans saying that they should, that Chicago should forego the cup and we should.
Honestly, that's not even on my mind.
I know. Let's replay. I say we replay that Stanley Cup right now.
Put your seatbelt on.
We'll replay that Stanley Cup right now, and then we'll see who wins, and that's who gets it. We'll do it all over again.
We would lose because they still have a couple players from that team still active, and ours are.
I don't know. I don't think they're playing all that great.
Anyway, let's move on to a less intense subject matter. But, ladies and gentlemen, we felt this had to be addressed and addressed early. Just an awful thing, an awful thing. And as Trevor said, an absolute black eye for the NHL. And Jesse is chiming in. Absolutely disgusting. Count on it. Oh, yeah. Guys, thank you, Jesse, for bringing this up. We forgot to mention the legendary coach, Joel Quenneville, who's now leading a terrific Florida team. He's culpable. He was part of the meetings in 2010. I expect, as Jesse is indicating on this question or statement, Joel Quenneville, his head's going to roll. Vance, do you think so?
Yeah, most definitely, Dan, and it should. Like I said earlier, anybody that was a part of this, the league has to step in and make an example out of every and anybody that had anything to do, with this situation. Quenneville included. It doesn't matter, that they won a Stanley Cup. It doesn't matter that he's leading a great Florida team now. Right is right and wrong is wrong. And if he had any information on this and he didn't come forward, he needs to be let go as soon as possible.
Yeah,
just as guilty or more guilty in my book.
Oh yeah, I mean, listen, when you're a powerful head coach, you know everything that goes on with your team, and he was at that practice, obviously, where the players were bullying.
Yeah, absolutely.
And real quick before we have to move on, Jesse, I was referring to the actual 2010 squads. If they laced it up now, most of them are old men at this stage. I'm not talking about current Flyers versus current Blackhawks. I agree with you. The current Flyers would beat the current Blackhawks, but I'm talking about if you brought back Mike Richards, whatever bar he's hanging out in, I don't know if he could lace them up right now. So we'll move on. The league is going to have to do some stuff. Agree with Vance about the league's letting it go because it's the best team. And yeah, Vance is spot on. And we're all spot on. The league is culpable. They're finding a team $2 million when, again, I wouldn't be surprised if the Senate, the House goes after them, like they did with the steroid issues back in the day. This is not done by a long shot. All right, let's move on to less compelling news. Our local hockey club, gentlemen, how do you think the Flyers first phase of the season has gone thus far. Our 4-game homestand. Vance, you put it out there before the season start. Guys, what do you think their record will be after 10 games? We all speculated. I would have been wrong. So their first 4 games, I'll start with you, Vance.
Yeah, now granted, I haven't seen as much of them as you guys have, but the early returns look pretty good. I think it makes a difference with bringing in veteran players. You can see that everybody understands their role. I know last year we talked a lot about guys like Myers, looking unsure of himself and, what his responsibilities were when he played with Sanheim. You don't see that this year with guys like, Yandel and Ellis. We talked in the first episode about the difference between having a Cam Atkinson and a Jake Voracek. There's a difference when you have a guy that's looking to shoot the puck as opposed to a guy that's looking to pass the puck. So overall, I just think that they look like a much better team. It looks like guys know their roles. And, the one thing that's impressed me most is, the breakouts out of the defensive zone and just getting up ice. These passes are not in guys' skates this year. We talked, in the past a lot about the Flyers being slow. Well, hindsight being 2020, a lot of that was just like in football. If you don't hit a wide receiver in stride, they're not going to look as fast. And, this year, that's one of the things that I noticed. They're much cleaner, with the puck and moving the puck. So, so far, so good. I think everybody that they brought in has looked great. Brassard in particular has been better than I expected. I thought it was a mistake to send down Morgan Frost, but he's played his role really, really well. And that line's probably been their best line. So far, so good, I say, guys.
No, you're correct. It's funny. You mentioned 2 things that Nikki T and I have discussed. I use the exact analogy about leading a wide receiver for Yak versus when you tic-tac-toe a pass out of the zone. Same spot on analogy, Vance. Well, and Brassard's been excellent. Nikki Nuts, you were at the first game. How do they look live? Nikki Nuts, I can't read lips.
Like I said, the first sorry, my kid was trying to get a hold of me, so I muted it. The first game they looked quick with the puck as far as passing, as Vance just said. That was the biggest thing I saw, was them getting out of the zone clean. And for the most part, they did that. The last couple games, they kind of hesitant, like Ristolainen, that haphazard pass off the boards, which I think he'll clean that up, and I think they will clean that up. Ellis is awesome back there. I think he's one of the biggest unsung heroes of the additions to this team. I think he brings a ton of leadership, and he stabilizes that. I do think Provy needs to get better. I think he needs to progress to the next level. Is he going to do that? I don't know, but he has to. He has to do better than what he's doing now.
And unfortunately, gentlemen, I read that Ellis is definitely not playing against Edmonton.
Yeah.
And Nicky Nuts just mentioned Ristolainen's famous suicide pass, as you call it, out of the zone. Now, I want to give Ristolainen the benefit of doubt. I trumpeted that guy all last season, how I knew he was potentially available. The metrics obviously don't bode well for him, but I'm not going to judge him because I have a totally gut feeling that he's playing hurt. I mean, he missed the first 2 games. He probably came back early. So
Right.
we're not going to be a judge and jury on him based on his first few games. And he hit, don't get me wrong, but he still hasn't hit like the rest of the line, and we know. So I don't think he's playing 100%. And now that Ellis is potentially injured, I think he's probably going to, really grit it out to stay in the lineup if he's indeed hurt. But it leads me to my next question, Nick. Just thoughts on our new additions in general. Atkinson, Ellis, Ristolainen, Yandel, and we have to throw Brassard in there. I am not throwing in Nick. I am the next Kent Manderville Thompson. I'm not bringing him into the equation. Your thoughts on Atkinson, Ellis, Ristolainen, Yandel, and Brassard? They've been excellent, right?
They have. Are you going to throw in Martin Jones too? But
no.
Anyway, we don't have to do that. So, yeah, I mean, look, they're so much more balanced. Everything is working better and more as it should for a hockey team to be more complete. So, they're a +5 in goal. They're 13 goals for, and they're a five. They're a +5 in goals combined goals. What's the word I'm looking for?
They've scored more than they've let in.
Exactly.
The goal differential.
Goal
differential.
Yeah, the goal differential, right. So they're +5 goal differential right now, which means that things are working together. Everything we thought was going to happen on the defensive side of things to make this team better, both defensively and offensively, as we talked about with the breakout, and how to deal quicker and faster and more alert in transition is happening. So, all those players that you just mentioned, Dan, that we got in the acquisitions are an addition. I don't see any negatives to anybody that we brought in right now. I do believe that Ristolainen is hurt because, a player like that's hurt, you're really, he needs to be a healthy player to be someone that you need to have out there on a consistent basis, because a hurt Ristolainen is not going to be a good Ristolainen. He doesn't have the skill set to, to trump all those things if he's not feeling well. So, or if he's got some injuries that are hampering him. As far as, the wraparound pass, that could be due to injuries too. I mean, typically a defenseman would be more, you eat the puck before you wrap that puck around like that and try and make something happen as opposed to a blind pass. And if he's got a little bit of fear, a big guy like him has a little bit of fear of getting hit, that could lead or that could be right to what you're saying about the question, is he really healthy?
Yeah, because one of the sequences that I'm visualizing, he had the puck pretty much on his own behind the net, not a lot of pressure, and he didn't even look to skate to make the initial outlet.
Right.
It was just right around. So I think he's not nearly 100%. So I am not judging him at all. And you could just tell, obviously winning breeds a good culture, but you just get a vibe that this team is a team that likes each other. And so they're all good chemistry guys. And who is not being discussed at all is Chuck Fletcher. He deserves some credit for these moves. So kudos to Chuck Fletcher. Nicky Nuts. My next question, I'll start with you. Our next 3 games are against Connor McDavid, Elias Pettersson, and Johnny Hockey and company. How do you like the results from these 3 games? At Edmonton, at Vancouver, at Calgary.
I think we go 2 for 3.
2 out of 3.
2 out of 3.
Regulation.
I think we lose against the Oilers. I think we have our redemption against Vancouver, and I think Calgary could be up in the air, won by shootout, which would be rare for us, but to win in a shootout. But I think that's how the northern western teams play.
I agree with you. And Nick alluded to this on our post-game show. You could be looking at a very high-scoring affair. I mean, Edmonton has a lot more firepower, but I don't think they're as structured defensively as we are. So things can open up. Nicky T, elaborate, please.
I kind of am with Nicky Nuts on that. That's what the chalk says, and I really don't see them being able to outscore Edmonton. That's going to be a tough thing to do. I mean, I'll tell you what, though, that would be a great barometer for this team if they go into Edmonton to start this road trip and pull out a victory. Would be very, very impressive. And to me, would signify that they are one of the teams. They're a team in the Metropolitan Division that can contend for, one of those top 3 spots. I know it's early, but that's a good barometer to say, you know what, this Flyers team, we played 4 games. One was against Seattle. Okay. You lose in a shootout to Vancouver. You play a hell of a game against Boston. And then, you lose a heartbreaker against Florida, which is a game they definitely could have won. I hope they come out of this 2-1. My heart is hoping for that. My head is saying that never happens, and it's going to be 1-2 or 1-1-1. But it's going to be fun to watch. I know I'm going to probably drink some coffee around 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock for most of those games. We can try and stay up and watch, especially the Edmonton game. But we'll see.
All right, we have a Facebook listener. Unfortunately, on our end, it says Facebook user. If we were to go to our Facebook page, gentlemen, we'd actually see the person's name. They're predicting 1 win and 2 losses, I assume that means.
Yeah.
So, Vance, building on that question, knowing how Edmonton is, do we risk the fragility of Carter Hart's psyche and expose him to the Oilers? Or do we put Martin Jones in net so that he doesn't get shell-shocked against the Oilers? Or do we just have to throw all that out the window and say, you're the number 1 goalie, you're playing? Again, I still don't know where we're at with that kid. So what are your thoughts on who the goalie will be against the Oilers?
So, knowing a little bit that I know about Carter Hart and the things that I've read about him, I think he will want to play against Edmonton. I think he wants to prove that he's the guy. So I don't think you do him any favors. As a matter of fact, I think you do him a disservice if you sit him in that game. And if you want to find out about the kid, if you're still not sure, that's the perfect game to play him in. I mean, because you want to see him battle. What better team to battle against than Edmonton, who's one of the best, highest scoring teams in the league. But I think you have to stick with Carter Hart. I think you have to stick with him and let him grind it out and let him prove it.
No, you know how I feel. Nicky Nuts and I had the mentality that you ride him until back-to-backs, or if he has a shaky start here and there, but he's the horse and you ride him. Obviously, Martin. I think one of the sequences is a back-to-back, so we're going to see Martin Jones for sure. And I guess this is a segue into the next question. How are we feeling about Carter Hart? And Nicky Nuts alluded to how he's feeling about Provorov's play. I'm not going to put you under the microscope, Vance. Ladies and gentlemen, Vance has been at a great new job and he's got crazy hours and he's been working his tail off. So he hasn't been really able to watch all 3 periods of every game. So I'm not going to, grill Vance on this because he really hasn't had the chance to do a full scouting report thus far. So I'll start with you, Nicky T. How are your concerns? Are any concerns with Carter Hart and your thoughts on Provy's play?
I'm not too concerned with Carter Hart. And back to what you were saying, Dan, about Edmonton. It's interesting because Edmonton and Calgary are back to back, and then they've got a break, and then it's like two days or 3 days. Or no, I'm sorry, Edmonton and Vancouver are back to back, and then they got a few days, and it's Calgary. Now, if it were me and I was coaching Carter Hart, who's already seen Vancouver, I would want to play Carter Hart against Vancouver because he's already got a feel for the team. He's got a feel for the players. Maybe he's picked something up here or there where, that could help him strategy wise going into that game. So it is interesting. So if that's what they're thinking, then you very well might see Jones play against Edmonton because you can't. It's going to be Edmonton or Vancouver. That's where the back-to-back. That's where you're going to see those two play, and then Hart will play against Calgary. So right, interesting. I personally would like to see Hart play against Vancouver. So that.
So then so now you're going back on your thinking that that Jones will start against Edmonton.
I do. I think it could happen.
Well, we have our loyal listener Adam checking in as always. What's up, fellas? And ride hard till the wheels fall off. So we know how Adam feels. And
we don't want the wheels to fall off. That's the problem.
No, right. We don't want the wheels to fall off.
It's time to.
That's what we got to remember, guys.
Maybe his left pad, not the wheels. And play hard. 100% agree. Is again, unfortunately, a Facebook listener that's not being identified, unfortunately, by StreamYard. Yeah, it's interesting. The bottom line is Jones played well in his only start, and you got to get him some minutes. So again, there is a part of me that says if this is a 6-4 type game against Edmonton, and we kind of all have a gut feeling that Edmonton, chalk wise, will win this game. If that's your crystal ball, do you want Carter Hart playing in a 6-4 loss against Edmonton? It's like it's a catch-22.
So
I want Carter Hart to be the number one. That's what I want. I want him to establish that he is the number one.
No,
he hasn't proved that yet.
Oh, wait a minute, real fast, Vance. My unidentified user is the great Josh Roberts of he's my chiropractor, Holland, Pennsylvania. Josh Roberts, Family Chiropractic. There's a ugly plug for you there, Josh. But Josh is a fantastic listener and a fantastic chiropractor and an unnamed user, a listener on our show. All right, thanks, Josh. Vance.
No, I was just going to add whether to me it's a long season, guys. So whether Carter Hart wins or loses, 6-4 against Edmonton, I don't think that's really the thing. I think you want to get him in there, and you want to help build on. You want to try to get him some confidence. What if he wins that game? You know what I mean? Like,
no, I'm not saying one way or the other. I'm throwing it out there. I can see it would be absolutely. Listen, we'd all be doing backflips if they won 3-1. The kid stood on his head against McDavid, Draisaitl and company, right? But if they lose 6-4, how many times are we going to be texting each other? Did you see that goalie let in short side? Come on, can't happen. So that's it's like it's just I'm just throwing it out there. I'm not saying I want him to sit. I want him to start, but I'm just any concerns that he goes up against such a high scoring machine in Edmonton, and we're still not 100% sure about his psyche. That's at least this speaker is not 100% sure of his psyche. All right, we'll move on to the next question. Players that you are frustrated with. I am going to start this one off. I've developed a nice rapport with a gentleman from Flyers Alley, the Admiral. He loves Nico Baker-Bell. He told me that in a text. And I can see why from the perspective the kid works his ass off. He hits everything in sight. But he just frustrates the hell out of me. It's getting to a point where he could be Nick, I need your famous line. I always say he could be in the middle of the ocean and miss the water. Nick, what's your famous line with him?
He couldn't hit sand if he fell off a camel.
Yeah. So you got him and Nate Thompson that could be playing in the desert and have a soccer net to shoot at, and they're not going to hit sand or the soccer net. But so Nico Baker-Bell is the guy that frustrates me the most, and Travis Sanheim is my other player.
Yep.
I just am not seeing any step up in his game.
Yep.
And Nicky Nuts, I kind of disagree with you. I think Provor's played pretty solidly so far. I mean, is he because like obviously when you play with Ellis, you can't help but play better. So, but the players that are just really frustrating me. Now, listen, I'm glad I didn't say Travis Konechny because he's been playing great.
Yeah.
I'm glad I didn't say Keith Yandel for his rumored defensive liabilities. He's had a few breakdowns, but he's been playing great. So my guys are Sanheim and Nico Baker-Bell. I'll go to you, Nicky T.
Well, I think we're obviously all on the same. Where I know you and I are on the same page with NAK, Dan, and as far as not hitting the net and all that stuff, he's not in there to score goals. So he's a fourth line guy.
He's there to break the plexiglass.
I mean, he's in there. He's in there to keep goals from happening. He's in there to give the first, second, and third lines a break when they need it, and not make any mistakes. And he's not doing that. He's not doing those things. He's making a lot of mistakes. He's turning the puck over. He's making inadvertent passes. And yes, he hustles. He's great. He's a hardworking kid. He's got a lot of grit. But when you have a fourth line role and you can't do the things in your role on the fourth line to keep your team in the game and keep your goal scorers come back and have the opportunity to win games for you, then it's time to make a decision of whether or not he's the right guy for the line. So I am frustrated with NAK, very much so. And I am frustrated with Sanheim as well. He's just a little too sloppy for me. And I think it was Zach that said, that's what you're that's what you're going to get when you've got a guy that's that aggressive. And as long as he can, bring some of the offense to negate some of his poor play defensively, that it should be okay. But, that to me is Ghost, right? So that's basically the same thing. But Ghost was a producer offensively. He knew how to put pucks in net, or he knew how to make things happen offensively, whether he was dishing it out or he was joining the rush or whatever the case may be. So Sanheim's he's got to clean things up a little bit, or else, in my opinion, when you've got, the young defensemen in our pipeline that are ready to come up and chomp at the bit to make this team, you're going to have to start to consider trade offers for him.
Mr. Nuts, players that are frustrating you a little bit.
For one, Cabell he drives me bonkers. He is the perfect player that kills momentum every time you have it. He either flubs it or he takes a shot off the high glass and it ends up going the other way. It just drives me bonkers. I won't say Sanheim again, just to be different, but I think Prove been okay, but he is not the number one that he should be. And that's starting to piss me off. He's not the number one that he should be.
Well,
that has to improve on his end.
Yeah, unfortunately, he might be what he is, a damn good player that for this team. There's no other alternative.
We all sat there and said he plays a ton of minutes. He plays a ton of minutes. Well, we took a little of his minutes away, and he's still doing the same stuff that he was doing. So
I think he's been a little more defensively responsible. I still see him missing a lot of shots on net, but I get where you're coming from. I've come to peace that he's not a Norris Trophy candidate like I thought he would be when he first broke into the league.
Oh, and I want to start the new chant of the Fab line. That's their new nickname.
Farabee, Atkinson, and
yes,
okay,
Fab.
I like that.
They are the
and
Fab
Brassard.
line.
Yeah, and Brassard. Okay.
Yep, I love Brassard. I think he's a great addition to the team. Yeah. I think he does all the little things correct, and I think he's a great veteran. Like we've been saying, they brought in a ton of great veterans that are really doing a well job, and it just sucks that we're in such a hard division. We really are in a really hard division.
Yep, I agree. Now, Vance, again, I know you haven't had a chance to eat, sleep, and breathe hockey with your work schedule. Do you want to tackle this question?
Yeah, so here's my take. We talk about NAK a lot. We talked about him a lot last year, right? Certain coaches like certain players for whatever reason. And he seems to be a player that Vigneault identifies with. If you remember last year, we talked a lot about Vigneault kind of messing with Farabee a little bit. And, all throughout the process, it seemed like NAK continued to go out there and make mistakes and continue to play. So, yeah, certain coaches like certain players, and that's just the way that it is. So I do think that maybe once Allison comes back, maybe they might have other options to maybe move him out of the lineup if he's still not playing well. And also go ahead, Dan.
I have the solution, Vance.
Okay. You want to go?
I have the solution. Patrick Brown has been skating with the club. He's done with his COVID protocol. And I would love to see him step right into Nico Kubel's role. And like you referenced, Allison's going to return eventually. Hayes is going to return eventually. Actually, Nick and I were talking. I think we did a post. It was just the two of us in our last post game. If the Flyers continue solid play, and let's cross our fingers they do, perhaps we have an embarrassment of riches with Brown, Hayes, Allison returning. Maybe Morgan Frost does well in the minors. We have to call him up. Maybe York's pounding on the door. We have to call him up. So it could bode well that we have we might have some legitimate depth. And did you guys see this McEwen kid contributing the way he has? Very defensively responsible.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, he's a hitter. You could see he's extremely diligent in his defensive zone. He wants to get he knows he's a fourth line player, and to stick to the team, he's got to grind and get the puck out of the zone. No, I haven't seen one poor giveaway by the kid. He seems composed with the puck. So he's been a pleasant surprise. So I don't see that kid going anywhere. Thompson obviously is very solid defensively and good on draws. He just annoys the hell out of me. I just can't put my, he just. I would like to see. I wish we had someone that could fill his role that had a little bit of offensive potential.
Dan
But again,
just fighting.
Well, Thompson doesn't fight like he used to. I mean, he stuck up for his captain, so that was great. But he's not really a frequent fighter like he used to be. Brown, however, my scouting report from my buddy at Vegas Fever Pod says Brown is feisty. McEwen is feisty. So we've got some grit, and with the Islanders and Capitals and those teams, Rangers down the road, you're going to need it. So it's a pleasant problem, gentlemen. Do you agree that when these guys come back, Mr. Tosti?
It's going to be really interesting because really when you look at the lineup, Giroux, Couturier, Konechny, that's staying the way it is. The Fab line, Nick, is staying the way it is. And then you've got Lindblom, Loughton, and Van Riemsdyk, So, Hayes, does he go, what happens there? Is Oscar really the guy for that third line? I mean, are you looking at a Hayes, Loughton, Van Riemsdyk line there? Because Hayes is not playing on the fourth line. We know that.
Correct.
And he shouldn't. So, is Oscar maybe slide down and do you have a Thompson, Lindblom? Does McEwen stay there? Does Brown fill that spot? Where does Allison go? It's really interesting. I would think, as much as I would hate to see it, Allison probably goes to Lehigh when he comes back.
I agree. He's gonna have to get the rust off anyway.
Yeah.
But so if Allison goes to Lehigh, gets his cardio back, his game back, his hands back, and everyone's healthy, it is tough decisions. We talk about when Brown and Hayes and Allison return, but inevitably someone else gets hurt. So I don't wish that, but that's the importance of having depth. So from that perspective, it's a good thing. If everyone's healthy, then you've got guys that are blocked, which is a coach's decision. But yeah, again, we don't want to beat up on poor old Oscar, but if you're talking about a skill player stepping in, Oscar has to get the bump, in my opinion. All right, gentlemen. We are Flyer and Ice because Ice represents the NHL. So let's talk about the NHL a little bit. How about those Buffalo Sabres, gentlemen? The Buffalo Sabres. Nick Tosti, in your wildest dreams, would you see this team starting off the way they did? Will it last?
No.
I don't think so.
I mean, they're 4-1-1. Come on, they were the doormat of the NHL last year. What have they done? That is miraculously turning things around. Other than
Anderson, 944 save percentage.
Yeah,
41-year-old goalie.
That won't last.
No, it's not going to last.
That's
but
not going to last.
As of this show, it's a good story. The Buffalo Sabres.
I mean, they are definitely, in my opinion, the surprise team as far as turning it around from the bottom to the top. The other surprise team that is going the other way is Montreal.
And and their neighbor.
Yeah.
Toronto's not playing so hot either.
That's correct. Yes. Yeah.
Now, Vance, your thoughts on this? And Nick, you nailed it. Montreal has been like a complete shocker. But I was listening to Dave Poulin again. I mentioned it, and he brought up something to this effect. And Vance, I want to hear your thoughts on this. He's not really surprised with what's going on with Toronto because they've got half their salary tied up in Matthews, Marner, Tavares, and Nylander. And then, Hyman has more goals than all of them combined right now. They don't have glue guys because anyone that plays well, they can't keep.
Right.
So they're constantly revolving their other lines. So there's no cohesion with that team. And so he's actually not surprised when you have all the salary tie up in 4 players. Do you agree with Dave Poulin's assessment?
In the short term, yeah. I think in the long term, I think when you have that kind of talent, I think ultimately talent, the cream always rises to the top, as they say. So, I think that that's still enough talent to pull them into the playoffs. But ultimately, as you said, when you have to pay guys, you always reach that crossroads where you're not going to be able to spend and get that, those veterans or that glue guy that might help your team, reach the next level. But, and, that's in the short term, I think that they're good enough to still make the playoffs, with the top line talent that they have.
Now, Nick, are you shocked? Nicky Nuts, are you shocked at how the Blackhawks and Vegas Knights have started their season?
Yeah, that's actually what was going to be my
build on it, brother.
The Vegas is definitely a shocker, and Colorado only being at the 5 spot, I believe they're at the 5 spot, and to have the Blues as high as they are is that's it's amazing. I wouldn't expect that with 6 games that we played so far, somewhere around there, give and take teams. Some play 5, some that, but those were my 2. Wow, like I can't believe that they're where they are right now. I always thought Florida would be going to be good. I thought Tampa would be higher than they are too, which is a shocker. But everybody has a little lull, and they're going to find their way when they get at the end of the season. They always get in their strides, like the last 3 months of the season. So those were my 2 really, like, wow, Vegas and Colorado not at the top.
Right. And getting back to Chicago, obviously this drama that's been developing probably isn't helping. I'm sure it's been really heavy in that locker room over the past many weeks. But let's the allegation stuff aside, or the factual allegation stuff aside, the acquisitions of the Jones brothers, Fleury, perhaps mistakes. Vance?
So looking at the stats, Chicago is a -19 in goal differential. To me, that speaks to and it goes back to what we talked about with Carter Hart last year. You can have one of the best goalies in the league, but if you don't have the defensive structure around him, the goalie's not going to perform. And that's what I think is happening in Chicago.
Right. And you wonder if he was back with Vegas, I wonder if he's like a heart and soul guy, from what I've been told. And I wonder if they really miss him in Vegas. But I do think the teams like Vegas, Colorado will turn it around for sure. And like you said, Toronto has too much talent to stay in their position. I don't necessarily think listen, Carey Price isn't playing. And that's how Montreal, got as deep as they did. They had this quintessential hot goaltender. He's dealing with some personal issues, and he's not carrying the team. So I'm not really overly shocked there. And like you said, Nick, the Tampa Bay type, Tampa Bay, you can only play intense after intense after intense for so long without having a little bit of letdowns throughout the season. But like you said, when it counts, I think they'll rev the engine and make some of our predictions potentially come true. So, gents, I say we go for it. We have 10 minutes left. So, Vance, I am going to ask you one of the greatest questions ever asked a man. What time is it?
It's time for the penalty box.
I like that one too. Oh wait, I went to the wrong one, didn't I?
Yep.
Vance, ask me the question again, sir.
What time is it, man?
Oh my God!
Are you supposed to ask me?
Yeah. I got all flustered. I went to the old penalty box video clip there. Yeah, it's time for the penalty box. So I have to get rid of this so I can pull up our graphic. So, guys, we'll get through this quickly. Vance has only 10 minutes. He has to do an important job. He has to do with some father duties, which is so important. The topic this week, thinking outside of modern hockey and the standings and the news is I just wanted to say, you know what, guys? We're Flyers through and through. We bleed orange, but we all have players that we've watched, admired over the years. So my question to my boys was, who are your 4 favorite non-Flyers? All right. And here are our lists. So I will start with Nicky Nuts. Nicky, talk to me about your list of Dino Ciccarelli, Pat LaFontaine, Pavel Bure, and Matthew Barnaby. Talk to me about your list.
Well, these are all a little personal to me, to be honest with you. Not
That's
so
why
much,
it's your list.
not so much Pavel, but my first jersey was a Dino Ciccarelli jersey from the Capitals.
Well, you told me that I would have put a cap graphic up there.
That was my first. That was my first jersey I've ever had, and it was given to me by my cousin that played hockey.
I dig it.
And Pat LaFontaine was his favorite player, but I just thought he was one of the best all-around top players in the league, and he always played with a high intensity. He always had a great skill. That's the same thing with Pavel Bure. Pavel is like a Connor. He just moved so smooth on the ice, and he was just a remarkable player and fast as anything. And I put Barnaby on there because I love the goddamn hate him. I loved kicking his butt every time he played the Flyers, and I took enjoyment out of that. So I really enjoyed seeing him get his ass whooped by Rod Brindamore. It was just I just loved hating him.
Actually, I recall it that Brindy kind of got the short end of that stick, but I get your point. Lindros pounded him a few times. The Russian Rocket, man, you can't go wrong with the Russian Rocket. Vance, I am going to let you go next in case you have to jump out of this episode, and the 3 of us will wrap it up. But Vance, talk to us about your list.
Awesome. So thanks, Dan. So yeah, Mark Messier, one of the greatest leaders in sports. Wasn't a guy that was overly fast. He didn't look overly skilled, but he was a tremendous, tremendous leader and a great player. And always a guy that I wish that, would have laced it up in the Flyers uniform. Because to me, he was really like a typical Flyers type of player. I thought he would have fit really well in Philadelphia. What can I say about Mario Lemieux that hasn't already been said? A phenomenal player. I remember being like 10 years old and opening a Pro Set pack of hockey cards and just reading his stats on the back and thinking, is this real? How did this guy score 185 points in a season? He was that good, and didn't really start to see Lemieux too much until the Flyers traded Tocchet to the Penguins. That was around the time when I started watching hockey. And that's when I really got to appreciate Mario Lemieux as the phenomenal player he was. Solani and Bure, I kind of looped those two in together because, those two, again, they were in my formative years. And that was at a time where we didn't have social media. So the story of a guy, like Solani scoring, 72, 76 goals in his rookie year?
76, yeah.
Right, 76. That was a really big deal. And
Lindros' rookie year.
Right. And if you were on the East Coast, you didn't really get to see a whole lot of that. So that was a bigger, when I was growing up, we had word of mouth, right? We didn't have Twitter or anything like that.
Good point.
So, that made that story even bigger. And Bure, one of those guys that could do things with the puck at a high speed that you are not used to seeing, like outside of Connor McDavid. Like I remember going back and watching, highlights of him, like putting the puck off of his skate and, scoring a goal that way, just doing crazy things at high speed. So, yeah, those are the 4 guys that stood out to me in my formative years growing up, and those were my 4 favorite players that weren't Flyers.
All right, wait. The boss is checking in. Tony Cotillo. Nicky Nuts likes Barnaby. Let's go, Ty Domi. Both crazy SOBs like Mr. Nuts.
I would have loved to seen Barnaby on the Flyers, to be honest with you. I just liked the way he played the game. He was gritty. He was a pain in the ass to everybody that played. Right. And that's why I loved him, because I hated him.
See, unfortunately for you, Vance and Nicky Nuts, Nikki T and I, we got to watch Kenny Linsman for a number of years. So if you could be a fan of Kenny Linsman, you could be a fan for just about anybody, because there was no bigger rat in hockey than that guy. And he was our rat. So, yeah, would Dale Hunter have looked good in the Flyers uniform? Would I know you say that, but you know, and yeah, Barnaby was meant to be a Flyer. I always believe that. And when you look at his bio, you don't realize how many teams he bounced around with at the end of his career.
Yeah.
And now he didn't land in the orange and black. All right. So, Vance, love your choices. Love your choices. Adam, Brodeur, Yager, Brett Hull, and Stevie Y. So that's going to segue right to Nikki T.
Good choices, Adam. Yeah, I mean, you know, I guess I'm the only one that has a goalie in there, but I just loved Patrick Roy. It was, you know, to be able to watch a goalie like that, who I think in his entire career had maybe 1 or 2 years that he was under 900 in the save percentage for any given season. It was incredible, and he was gritty too. Like, he was just, you know, he had that. I think Hextall took a lot out of his game from Patrick Roy with his competitiveness, and, you know, the way he just approached the game, and you know, the way he wanted to win constantly. He was a leader as a goalie. You know, all in all, in my opinion, the greatest goalie of all time. I know people could definitely dispute that with Brodeur. You know, but I loved watching Patrick Roy. Chris Chelios, I feel like, was maybe one of the most complete defensemen of all time.
I agree.
You just, you know, you put on that beautiful Blackhawk sweater and you watched him play, and it was just like, man, why can't he be on the Flyers? You know, his leadership, his defensive ability, his you know, his ability to play, you know, to get into the mix it up offensively as well. Just an amazing guy. I loved watching him play. Stevie Wonder. I mean, I think probably is in my top 3 favorite athletes of all time. I really just such an unsung hero. For 20 years, he played in the league, put up some amazing numbers. He had I think he topped it out at a 65 goal season about 4 or 5 years into Detroit. 3 Stanley Cups, leader. I mean, you can see what he's doing as a GM now. And you never heard anything bad about the guy. I mean, he was just, as much as he competed on the ice, he seemed like he was just like that gentleman that just kind of was one of those guys you wanted to sit at a bar and have a drink with. You know, and then Gretzky, I mean, it's just, you know,
Heard of him.
Third season in the league, he puts up 92 goals, and it was, you know, the rest was history. I mean, the guy was just unbelievable to watch. I was blessed to be able to see his games live on a regular basis, you know, growing up watching hockey. In my opinion, the greatest hockey player of all time, and maybe one of the top 5 sports athletes of all time.
All right, and mine, I guess, listen, I could have had Chelios on my list. I love him too. So I'll go from right to left, like I'm reading from Hebrew school class back in the day. We went the other direction, you know. Al McGinnis.
You're going with me, Dan. I went right to left, and you're continuing to go.
Al McGinnis, the hardest slap shot in his era. He played from 81 to 2004, 23-year career. 2 years. He was a minus player. In both those years, he was just -1. Norris Trophy winner. And one of his years as a defenseman, he had over 100 points, 28 goals, 75 assists. He was just a solid, damn good defenseman. Now, talk about a guy that knew how to play defense. He worked his angles. He wasn't a fast skater, but he had a hell of a shot, and he really worked his angles. My next guy is Doug Wilson. I just love the way he skated. He was the premier defenseman on the Blackhawks. Both him and, I forgot to mention, McGinnis, Norris Trophy winners. Bob Nystrom, you would think, why the hell would I pick a guy that broke our heart in a Stanley Cup? I liked him before then. He was as tough as they came, fought anybody, won most of his fights. a 7-time 20-goal scorer for a guy with that kind of grit, 1-time 30-goal scorer. He's the kind of guy every player has to have. And my favorite player probably of all time that wasn't a Flyer is Larry Robinson. Another guy that played over 20 years in this league. And I'm going to pull up a stat here, ladies and gentlemen. I'm on my other computer here. Larry Robinson played 20 years and not once was a negative player. And in 1 year, he was a plus 120. A plus 120. And he won the Norris Trophy 2 times. And if it wasn't for Bobby Orr, he would have won it more. So, ladies
I
and
gotta
gentlemen,
be honest with you, dude. I don't know any of your players.
all right, just change your diaper, Nikki. Just change your diaper.
I'm so young. I don't know any of those guys.
And I got you. So, listen, ladies and gentlemen, that wraps up episode 2. Again, we started a little heavy with what's happening in Chicago, and hopefully we ended in a little light note by bringing up some of our favorite players from yesteryear. On behalf of Nikki Nuts, Nikki the Scout Tosti, Vance, Mr. Smooth Crew, who had to leave a little early, I am Dan Green. Please, I encourage you, check us out on Apple Podcast. I'm telling you, the ride home is so much better than watching us live. We're all good-looking men. Don't get me wrong, but listening to it on like a radio type of format, we sound really good, don't we, Nick?
We have faces for radio for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but seriously, check us out on all socials. Like and subscribe on YouTube. And ladies and gentlemen, we love you. We'll be back next week and for future post-game shows. On behalf of the crew, good night, good hockey. Take care, everybody.
Later.